Hello and welcome back to Grow in Grief. This is Stephanie Fetterman. I am your host, and this is my beautiful friend, Stacey Bibbs.
Hello.
So I will have you go ahead and start, and I will say this is our Valentine episode, so I am super excited to hear your story.
Well, I'm very honored to even be asked to tell it, but I have quite a history when it comes to loving and not doing such a great job of it, but really deciding when I got married at 19 that I was going to be the best wife, the best mom, the best everything. And so I really threw my heart and soul into trying to be perfect, which we all know is quite a mistake. There's just no such thing, which I found out the hard way, but I sure gave it a great try.
Yeah.
And I was blessed to have 4 amazing children that are now adults and reproducing on their own. I have 7 amazing grandchildren and 4 girls right off the bat, and then 3 boys to follow. So I keep asking if anyone wants to fill in that last spot for a boy. I have no takers at this point in time, but that's okay. And so I married in college, so it was between my freshman and sophomore year.
Okay.
And we were married for 40 years. And it was very tumultuous at first because neither one of us had a clue. I was 19, he was 22. You know, we were kind of feeling our way through things. Neither one of us had these really strong examples that were walked out before us. So we were just trying to, like I said, love God and do our best to figure it out as we learn to love each other. But it was really amazing. Things kind of settled down after about 5 years, and I think we really got into a very strong groove of caring for each other, caring for our kids, and really being a strong part of our church and community. So I'm very, very grateful for that. And then just out of the blue, my husband went for blood work. And in the blood work, they said, we have some cells that shouldn't be there. So we did follow-up testing, and that's when they told him he had smoldering myeloma, which is kind of interesting because the cells are there. They're not necessarily active, and there's really nothing that they do until they grow to the point that they reach disease state. So for some people that never happens.
Yeah.
They identify them, they're there, and that's the end of it. And then others, typically around 70, they'll activate. But unfortunately for him, he had the most virulent form of these cells. And so when they activated, they took off like a bat out of hell. And so for about 13 years from the time he had the diagnosis, we did okay for about the first 5 years, and then it just went.
Yeah.
And so 3 stem cell transplants, multiple times in the hospital. Towards the end, just a series of literally every other week we were in the hospital. Sometimes a week at a time, sometimes 2 weeks at a time. And I truly say we because fortunately it was pre-COVID and my husband hated to be alone. So I literally stayed overnight with him.
Yeah.
Every single night he was in the hospital. So for all those hundreds of days that he was there, he was never there alone.
Yeah.
And I actually count that a privilege because I feel like in many ways it extended our time together. It allowed us to really talk through and deal with pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Like, we're like, hey, we've got tons of time together. Let's just work on us and talk about things. And so we did. And I'm really grateful for that time. And I remember getting this sense that he didn't have a lot of time left. And my daughter, ironically, is an MD, PhD And she is a oncologist that practices the very cancer her dad had. And I said, I've asked his doctors if they have a timeline, and they won't give me one. And she said, well, Mom, we don't like to do that.
Yeah.
And I said, but I'm seeing things. And so I hate to ask you, but you get his blood work every week.
Yeah.
What are you seeing? And she looked me in the eyes and said, I don't think Dad has but about 6 months to live. And he died in 5. And so I had asked God for 3 things. When it was, of course I asked him to heal him.
Yeah.
But when it became apparent that healing wasn't going to happen here on earth, I asked for 3 things. I said, please don't take him alone. He hates being alone.
Yeah.
And I don't want him to have to experience that.
Yeah.
The second thing I asked for was, please don't take him until he's ready.
Yeah.
Because he was such a fighter and he really wanted to be here. And I just felt like it would be so hard to see him struggling for more when his time was up. So I was like, God, please don't take him until he's ready. And then the third was really selfish, and it was for me. I was like, don't let him die in our bed.
Yeah.
I
feel like that's not a selfish thing.
I was like, I don't want that to be
That place that's supposed to be a restful place.
Yes.
Should not,
Yes.
Nope, totally get it.
So those are the 3 things that I asked for. And so we literally were coming home from a blood transfusion. And he starts saying things like, you know, honey, I think I've done everything I can do. I really feel like I've given this my best fight.
Yeah.
I said, hold on, I'm going to stop the car.
Yeah.
Because I want to hear what you're saying. So I pull over into a park, and he says, I'm not a quitter. I said, are you kidding me? You have endured way more than most people would have even signed up for.
Yeah.
And you did it full throttle. Like, I want to beat this thing. I want to be here with you. I want us to have a long life together. And so I was like, you did all of that. You gave us so much time. You fought so hard. You're not a quitter.
Yeah.
So our kids were coming in that weekend because we had moved up our 40th vow renewal celebration. And I said, tell you what, the kids are going to be here this weekend. Let's talk about it then. We'll tell them face to face, answer any questions that they have. And then on Monday, when we go to see your oncologist, we'll let him know that you want to back off on some of the treatments and just kind of let things happen a little more naturally. So we had a great plan. We were totally in it. So that night, I'm giving him a breathing treatment, which I typically had to do before he went to sleep. And he's like, it's not working. I said, what do you mean it's not working? He said, I feel like I still can't catch my breath. I said, okay, calm down. We're going to call 911. He goes, no, just drive me to the hospital. I'm like, babe, I can't.
Yeah.
I can't help you if things go south on the way. We have to get help to come get you. And so they did. And he went into the hospital that evening. My daughter and I waited in the waiting room. We waited so long, I was like, he's dead. And they're trying to figure out who has to come and tell his family, because, I mean, it was hours.
Yeah.
And, but he wasn't. But they had placed him on a ventilator. And things were very grave. And we were very much aware of that. Which was also a miracle in and of itself, because it was literally right at the height of COVID. And because of his cancer diagnosis, there's no way he should have got a ventilator at a time when they were so hard to come by. And yet they did. So that allowed all of the kids to come, nieces and nephews to come. His brother and his family from Wisconsin came. Everyone got to come to say goodbye. Our entire church staff literally hung out in the ICU with us
Yeah.
for that entire day.
And this was like just before all the restrictions were placed. Right?
Literally just before all the restrictions.
Yeah.
So we have to call all of our friends and say, look, don't cancel your plans. We're either going to have a vow renewal or we're going to have a celebration of life.
Yeah.
But I really want you to come. And they all agreed to it. They're like, well, the ticket's been purchased. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And so the chaplain overheard me say vow renewal. And he's like, I don't think you have until Saturday. But if you'd like, you could do that here. And I was like, wait, what? Like, it never even crossed my mind.
Yeah.
So my nephew ran home, got my dress, because Carl had never seen it. And I changed in the bathroom. And we did the vow renewal right there in the hospital.
Yeah.
And he had not spoken a word since we had left our home. And until Pastor Jeremiah said, do you still take this woman to be your wife? And he said, And so it was, everyone was shocked because here he hadn't said anything the whole time.
Yeah.
And yet that's when he chose to speak. And so that was really a precious gift and a precious memory, I think, for all of us. And by 3:00 that afternoon, he was gone.
Wow.
And they let us stay. We had at times almost 20 people in the room. They allowed it.
Wow.
And then we walked to, they do a thing where you can accompany the person to the elevator. And so typically their chaplain prays. This was a different chaplain now. Typically they pray for the family on the way to the elevator. And she turned to me and she said, you're a pastor. Do you want to pray? And I said, yeah, actually I do. It was such an incredible moment of God literally putting the words in your mouth and praying to honor his life, but to also infuse our family with life and hope and expectation that he fought so hard to give all of us.
Right.
So it was just an amazing, amazing moment. I'm so grateful that we had that. And so Saturday, instead of doing our vow renewal, we had a celebration of his life with all of our friends that were friends with us from college. They were all there. Our kids were there. Our church family was there. And I'm so, so grateful to have had that kind of an ending to his earthly assignment.
Right.
Because not everybody gets that.
Yeah.
So that was just a gift.
Yeah.
So that was really the story of our time of illness and getting to say goodbye.
Yeah.
And, you know, when it comes to what grief looks like, that was something that I realized I had started grieving him years before he passed. Every time there was something that was lost, he can't walk like he used to. He can't this like he used to. He can't so many things like he used to. There was a moment of grief. Of where you had to say, okay, I release that. I realize that is not a part of our story anymore. And then I would try to refocus on the good things that were still there. We can still talk. We can still, you know, sometimes eat. He couldn't often eat, but sometimes. You know, just things that we had enjoyed and getting to come back to that. But certainly trying to capture and encourage him. Tell your story. Talk to your kids. Talk to your brother. Talk to your loved ones. You literally have the opportunity to give them a blessing. Give them that.
I can't even tell you what, like, as hard as I know that was for you, like, what a gift it is to have that time.
Yes.
Because, like, I know with my mom, I did not have that opportunity. It was just an all of a sudden freak accident. And man, I'm like, I wouldn't wish, disease on anybody, but I would have to say that's one of the joys that comes out of it is you get all that time to make your peace, to say your, I love yous and your goodbyes and all of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I watched each kid go over and get real close and whisper things to their dad. I watched each friend go over and get the privilege of doing that. And so it was very interesting the first time someone said, well, you're a widow. How are you handling this? Or what do you do about that? And I asked what their story was, because I never want to make the assumption that simply because we find ourselves in the same place, that we've had the same story.
Right.
And, oftentimes it was sudden. It was, they had a heart attack and they never woke up again, or something, along those lines. And I will tell them, I said, my heart hurts for you.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what that's like.
Yeah.
I said, I had the most incredible runway to work through and deal with and process what was going to happen. And there were multiple times in that process that we thought for sure we were going to lose him. But we still had time.
Yeah.
And so I tell people, every grief is not the same.
No, it is not.
It is not the same. Even if you end up in the same place, it's not the same. And so I have been able, I believe, to kind of move forward with my life primarily because I had so much time to process and to work through and to wrestle with God and to come back with, okay, if not that, then this.
Yeah.
And so I'm really, really grateful for that. I ironically got to preach what I consider 2 bookend messages. I preached a message at the end of the year, one year, saying, I can't live by circumstances.
Yeah.
I have
I
to
remember that
live
message too.
by what I know.
Yeah.
And what I know is God is good. What I know is He is sovereign. And what I know is His plans don't always line up with mine.
Yep.
But I'm still better off in His hands than I am in my own.
Right.
And that I want to say these things before He dies. I want to say them before something happens. I want to be able to literally drive a stake in the ground, if you will, to say that I'm going to keep holding on to you.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Right.
And I was blessed to be able to have a follow-up to that, to say the unthinkable has happened.
Yes.
But my faith is still grounded. That stake has held.
Yes.
Not because I'm so good, but because He's good at holding us in those places.
Yes.
And bringing just that healing that comes. And it's really not about time. It's not about those kind of things. Sometimes it takes a very long time.
Right.
And sometimes it doesn't take as long because there's been these healings that have happened along the way.
Right.
And so I think for me personally, that is a huge part of what happened.
Yeah.
Because I could see these things, manifesting and then being lost. I was able to deal kind of incrementally with those kind of losses along the way, which then made it almost to the point of that relief that people have when someone they love has been very ill for a very long time.
Yeah.
And you recognize they no longer are in pain. They no longer are feeble. They are renewed.
Yeah.
And so that has been the thing that has been the most sustaining.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. I think one of the things that a lot of people can struggle with is that they just get so focused on like just wanting, you know, that cure or that thing to not happen, and then when it does, it's so easy to be angry, shook,
yes,
all of it. And you know, and I honestly have a lot of people asking like, how have I navigated all of this? And it always comes back to my faith. Like, without my faith, and I'm sure it's the same for you,
yes, like,
apart from God, I can do nothing, especially navigate grief.
Absolutely.
Because I know we understand that this life is temporary, and we have a home to go to after this. And I think that is the one thing that gives at least me peace.
Yes.
And I believe that no matter what I experience, not that things won't be hard, but big picture, looking at the big picture, this is just but a moment. Yes. Even if it's a hard moment, even if it's a difficult moment and I don't want to go through it and I don't want to experience it, it's still just a moment in the much bigger picture.
Couldn't agree more. That is the sustaining piece of it all.
Yeah.
Is recognizing, at least my belief, that this is not the end of the story.
Correct.
And that there is so much more on the other side of what we call life.
Yeah.
That is true life. And so I look forward to that.
Yeah.
I celebrate that. We had 6 grandchildren at the time that Carl passed, and we really thought we were done. And I remember being so grateful to God that he had gotten to meet all of his grandkids. And then my youngest comes up with one more child, and I remember a sadness settling over me because I thought, oh, Carl loved his grandkids so much. And I was so sad for a moment there, thinking he hadn't met him and he wouldn't know him and things like that. And I remember God just saying, silly girl, he met him first. I was like, I'm sorry, excuse me? He's like, he met him first. And I just thought, oh my goodness, what a tender thought to think he got to bless him.
I love that. Can I tell you that? How much that blesses me? Because one of the things that goes through my head all the time is like, man, I wish my mom could have met my kids. Like, she didn't get to know any of them. And so I can't even tell you how much that actually warms my heart, because I've never even thought of it that way.
Yeah. I felt like I could see him holding this baby I hadn't even seen and just blessing him.
Yeah.
And letting him know that he is part of a family that loves and cares and will be there for him. And I thought, okay. One of our running jokes with Carl was he used to say he was always the last to know.
Yeah.
And so literally on his headstone, it says, no longer the last to know.
I love that.
Because I do believe that he had that opportunity.
Yeah.
And that actually just gives me such peace about him not being here.
Yeah, so he was the first to know.
He was the first to know.
So tell me what life has been since losing.
Wow. So, I was fully convinced that I was going to be the most awesome pastor, the most awesome grandmother, the most awesome sister and auntie, all by myself. And little did I know that God had other plans for me. So we could not do any construction, any repair work, anything that would tear up parts of our home while Carl was so ill.
Right.
And so we put off major things that needed to get done. And so I knew that I needed to get someone to come in to do work on the house, painting and repair work and things like that, because it was not something I was going to do. And so I had coffee with my sister and some single women one day, And they were sharing with me all of their online stories. Oh, I went through this site, and oh, I went through that site, and all this kind of stuff. And I am literally like putting my face in my coffee cup because I do not want to be included in this conversation because I had no intentions of ever pursuing relationship, let alone going through extra steps in order to find love again. And so finally they realized I was really quiet in this conversation. And they said, you better pay attention because you need to know this. And I said, no, I don't. I said, I'm not getting remarried. I said, listen, if God wants me to get married again, he better pull up in my driveway, get down on one knee and say, hi, my name is so-and-so. God has sent me to be your new husband. So fast forward.
Funny how God works.
Oh, yeah. A few months later, I'm in my driveway saying goodbye to my son, and a white car pulls into my driveway. And this man comes out and starts hugging my son. Clearly, they know each other. I get a brief introduction, and I say, well, I'm going to let you all catch up. But before I go, I reminded my son I needed him to work on one of my coach lights because the fixture was bad. And so this gentleman said, oh, well, I do home repairs. I do painting. I do this. I do that. I do a little plumbing. I'm a, general contractor. So I know Alex has a lot of kids. If he's too busy, I'll be happy to, come by and give you a hand with anything that you need done. And I thought, good to know. I'll follow up with you. Well, sure enough, I ended up hiring this gentleman, and when I say he redid my house, there's only one room that he did not have to work on, and that was because my son-in-law had already done it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, from the kitchen countertops to flooring to painting to sinks being replaced, he did it all.
Yeah.
Well, during that time, this gave us time to just have casual conversation, get to know each other. It was nice to talk to someone my age, that kind of thing. Turns out he was born the same year as my previous husband. And just literally one day we had to pick up supplies from one of the local hardware stores. And it was something I needed to pick out. So we went together to get it. He stops in the middle of the store, turns and looks at me and says, I'm going to marry you.
Oh?
And I was like, I'm sorry, excuse me?
You're like, wait, you're not in the driveway.
I'm sorry, you what? He goes, yeah, I'm going to marry you. I don't know how long it'll take for me to convince you, but I'm going to marry you. And sometimes people say things and you're like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. And then there are times when someone says something and you're like, why does that feel truthful?
Yeah.
Like, why? What is going on? I don't want to be married. I want to be single. I've never been really single.
Yeah.
I became a mom at 18. I got married at 19. I stayed married for 40 years. Yeah. I want to try this single thing out, And, but I couldn't shake it.
Yeah.
I literally couldn't shake it. And then one day, we were working in a room, and I was moving some things out of the way, and he did the kind of casual, when someone is going behind you and they kind of put their arm like just on your shoulder, like, excuse me, because I'm going to walk behind you. And I felt it.
Yeah.
Like, I felt more than like you touched my shoulder. I was like, nope. God and I had to have a whole lot of conversations because I was like, I don't want this.
Yeah.
I don't want it. I don't need it. I've got friends. I've got a wonderful church. I've got grandkids. I don't need that. Mm-hmm. And God never rebutted what I was saying. He just kept doing what he was doing. And so finally, I asked God, I said, why is this even happening? Like, I don't understand. I didn't ask for this. Mm-hmm. And he said, actually, you did. And I said, excuse me? He said, Stacey, I'm answering prayers that you prayed when you were 16 and 17 years old. When you read a book on marriage because you felt like you didn't have good examples to see in your life, so you decided to read about them. And you asked me then, I want a husband I want a husband that cherishes me. I want someone to think I am the most amazing, beautiful, awesome woman in the world. And it doesn't matter that there are women more awesome and more beautiful than me. I want to be that for him.
And he loves you so much.
God did it.
Yes.
Like, it's almost unnerving to be that special to someone. And it has completely floored me. And interestingly enough, because he was around, especially during that first year of grieving, there were times when he would literally just walk in the door and he'd say, is it a Carl day? And I was like, how do you know? And he's like, I can just sense it. He said, I'll be quiet today. I'll find something quiet to do so I don't disturb you. Wow. And I was like, whoa. I remember writing in my journal, I actually wrote a poem. I'm like, who is this prophetic painter that you have sent to my house? Because the things that he perceives from me are not things I'm sharing. And yet he seems so in tune with where I'm at. And it was all God just creating a bond and answering prayers. I totally forgot I prayed. And we got married almost 9 months ago. And it has been incredible. People joke about your partner changing, once they get the girl. No, if anything, I would say it's ramped up. It's almost like he's found more things to adore about me. Or, I wake up sometimes with him just looking at my face. And he's like, I just can't believe God gave me someone so beautiful, inside and out. And I'm like, who are you?
You're like, yes, please.
It's just been amazing, and it's been such a gift. Following such a difficult season. I really worked very hard to honor my husband, to be there for him, to care for him, to love him, to try to keep him from wanting for anything. I would get up and drive him at 3 a.m. to his dialysis appointments and wait with him just in case something happened, so that he wouldn't have to try to reach me to say, I need to come home, or I'm not feeling well, or they're taking me to the hospital. I wanted him to feel like I was in this with him. Like, I can't take the pain away from you. I can't make you better, but I can be present. And I'm so grateful to God for the energy and the wherewithal and so many things that he worked out for me to be able to do that. And so after such a hard season, to suddenly have someone who says, you take care of everyone. I want to take care of you. I think that's what I'm supposed to do in these years of my life. It's just amazing. And I'm so grateful. Because it doesn't have to be this way. So it's just a gift, a kiss on the forehead from a father who loves me, and I'm just very grateful.
Oh, I love that. I remember when you told me that you got engaged, because like for the longest time I would be like, Tony totally likes her, and I was like, I wanted to be like, are you guys dating? But I didn't ever want to be like, are you guys dating? So like I would just see you guys at church, and I'm just like, he's totally smitten with her. And then I saw you and Tony at the elder and staff Christmas party, and I was like, I asked Lucas, I was like, are they together? And he was like, I don't know. And then it was like the next week, and you're like, we're engaged. I was like, they were totally together. But I just remember thinking, like, how sweet you two are together. Like, it just, it warms my heart, like,
Thank
to see
you.
the two of you guys together. Love it. So if you had 3 takeaways to give to somebody that's maybe going through the same situation, losing a spouse, what would be your 3 tips or takeaways to help them?
Sure. Well, I think the first one is probably something that everyone who has grieved will acknowledge. We all grieve differently.
Yeah.
I had to, in a sense, explain myself to my adult children.
Yeah.
It's only been hardly 2 years, Mom. How can you remarry after being married for 40 years? We thought you and Dad were happy. I said, we were very happy.
Yeah.
We were 2 peas in a pod. I said, I've grieved for a long time.
Yeah, because you had that long
Because
runway
I had
to
a long time.
navigate and grieve and deal
Exactly.
and heal along the way.
Exactly. So I would definitely say that, number one, everyone grieves differently. And it doesn't matter how similar your stories are. It doesn't matter how similar your losses are. Every single person processes, walks through, and grieves differently.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I would say is that some people start early. I didn't put 2 and 2 together until later. But when my oldest daughter was a junior in high school, I just felt this heaviness and I could not figure it out. My life was great. It was before Carl's diagnosis. All my kids are doing great in school. I have a phenomenal job. There is no logical reason for me to feel this weight.
Yeah.
And so, as I have to do when things come out of the blue and I don't know where they've come from, I go to God.
Yeah.
And I said, what is this? What am I feeling? And I remember having it gently kind of like my eyes open to the fact of I could see that our family was going to change. I'm going to have kids that are going to leave the home and go off to college and maybe find spouses like I did and maybe never even move back home and all of those things. And because I was so involved with my family and we were just this, you see one, you see all 6 of us,
right.
Kind of a thing. It was so much a part of my identity that recognizing that this was going to shift and change
Yeah.
was like, I needed to grieve that. Like,
Yeah.
I needed to recognize that I could be sad that this season was ending, even as I'm looking forward to the next season beginning.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of that way with Carl. Once the disease actually activated and I could see how each round of chemo took out of him, each round of radiation, what it took out of him, what the first stem cell took out of him. He stayed in remission maybe 2 months.
Wow.
Whereas most people get years
Yeah.
at least out of that in-between season. He did not. And so I really started grieving early.
Yeah.
And I think what I would say about that is to give people that are wired that way permission.
Yes. Oh, that's good.
Permission. You're not crazy.
Yeah.
If anything, you're more in tune with what is happening. And it's because you are that you recognize things will be different.
Yeah.
How do I build my heart to be ready for that?
Yeah.
How do I do the things that are intentional to make sure that I get the most out of this season right here and right now
Yeah.
before going into the next one? So I would just give people permission to grieve early if that is what they're sensing.
Yeah.
I was the one that said, how much time do we have? Because I know something is shifting.
Yeah.
And so that was really, it's just something I think that's very much so a part of me. And now that I recognize it, I'm like, oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay if that's how you're wired.
Yeah.
If that's what you need to do. And it actually helped me when the time came to not just be a hot mess.
Yeah.
And fall apart.
Yeah.
And really the third thing that I feel like I've learned through a lot of this is, like our Savior, we are people that are acquainted with grief. Mm-hmm. We don't realize it. Most people will say, well, the first time I really felt that loss was when my grandmother passed, or when my grandfather passed, or when I lost a parent, or something like that. But I don't think we recognize, in many ways, we grieve all the time.
Yeah.
We say goodbye to one thing even while embracing the next. Mm-hmm. And instead of that being like 1,000 little cuts, I think in the right perspective and with God's help, it becomes a fortification if we let it.
Yes.
Be. Like, I'm fortifying you for the next journey.
Yeah.
If we let it. I'm fortifying you for the next thing that you go through, because there are so many things that we have to grieve. And in our own way, we've been practicing this for years.
Yeah.
But we don't recognize it. And because we don't recognize it, it's hard to value something that you don't recognize.
Right.
But when you recognize it, then we are able to truly go, okay, you're building me up for this. And he can do that.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Thank you so much for joining, as my daughter is peeking around the corner. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate all of this.
Honor.
All of this was so amazing, and I know it's going to help somebody else. So thank you again for all of it.
Thank you.
Remember, goodbyes are not guaranteed. I hope that this podcast watered your life so you can grow in grief today. If you have something that you would like to bring to my attention for us to talk about on this podcast, please email me at growingrief@gmail.com. Thank you.